All right, diving deep today into charity and salvation. Heavy stuff.
Yeah.
But fascinating. We're exploring Allan Kardec's The Gospel according to Spiritism.
Oh, yeah.
And we've got something extra special.
Okay.
An interview with the spirit
Yeah.
of St. Vincent de Paul
Wow.
from the 1858 Spiritist Review.
It's like a really unique perspective to bring in. It should give us a fresh take on what it means to be charitable.
Exactly. Kardec kicks things off by diving into the parable of the sheep and the goats.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Going from Matthew chapter 25.
Okay.
Verses 31 through 46, where Jesus separates the righteous from the unrighteous based on their acts of charity. And it kind of flips the script. You know, on how a lot of people think about salvation.
Yeah.
It's not about being super devout or following every single rule. It's about how you treat others, especially those in need.
It's like actions speak louder than words. That's what the parable's getting at.
And it's even more interesting, cause the parable never even mentions specific religious beliefs.
Right.
Like it's suggesting compassion, caring for others. That's fundamental for everyone, no matter who you are.
That's a universal principle.
And to illustrate that even more, Kardec brings up the parable of the Good Samaritan. It's a powerful story about this man who gets robbed, left for dead, and who walks by. A priest, then a Levite.
Okay.
Both religious figures.
Right.
But the one who stalks to help, shows compassion, is the Samaritan.
And that's important because at that time, Samaritans were seen as outsiders.
Outsiders.
Yeah.
Even heretics by some.
Yeah, it really challenges us to think about who we see as good, who deserves our compassion.
It makes you think, like, are we limiting our own compassion?
Yeah.
Based on societal or religious boundaries.
Exactly. Are we really loving our neighbor as ourselves?
And Kardec, he doesn't stop there. He makes a bold claim, saying charity isn't just one condition for salvation.
Oh, wow.
But the only condition, he points out, that throughout the Gospels, Jesus is emphasizing charity and humility as the path to salvation.
So he's saying, like, the final judgment, it's not necessarily a literal event, more like a metaphor for this idea that helping others really matters in the grand scheme of things.
This makes me wonder, though, how does this interpretation resonate with different belief systems? What are the implications for those who have different views on salvation and the afterlife?
I mean, that's a really complex question, but it's definitely worth thinking about. It challenges us to rethink our assumptions, to consider the universality of this emphasis on compassion.
Okay. So Kardec then digs into another passage from Matthew, chapter 22, verses 34 through 40, where Jesus says, the greatest commandments are to love God and love your neighbor.
Yeah. Those are like the big ones, right?
And Kardec makes this fascinating connection, saying these two commandments, they're inseparable. You can't truly love God without loving your neighbor.
Right.
And vice versa.
It's like they're two sides of the same coin.
Loving your neighbor, it's a direct reflection of your love for God. And of course, Kardec ties this back to his argument about charity being the key to salvation.
It's a really compelling argument.
And to back it up even more, he brings in St. Paul from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, where Paul says, charity is more important than faith and hope.
More important than faith and hope. That's pretty big.
And what's interesting is Paul, who's often seen as, a pretty strict figure, defines charity. Not simply as giving money, but as a way of being, way of interacting with the world that's rooted in kindness and benevolence.
He's going beyond just outward actions. It's about an inner quality.
And this leads us to the interview with the Spirit, St. Vincent de Paul.
Okay.
And
echoes this idea that charity is multifaceted. It's more than just giving money. It's about a deep and genuine love for humanity.
It's about seeing the humanity in everyone and responding with love. And he encourages us to prioritize helping others without judging whether they're worthy or if we're going to get something in return.
Help without any strings attached.
And he even gives some pretty surprising advice coming from a saint.
What's that?
He says, we should trust God to handle those who might be faking their need and just focus our energy on helping.
That's a pretty radical idea. Just trust and help. Don't worry about who's deserving.
Exactly.
It's a real shift in perspective. Like he's saying, just help. Don't overthink it. Let a higher power sort it out.
Yeah. And St. Vincent de Paul, he also digs into the motivation behind our actions. Like he compares those who are consistently charitable with what he calls occasional benefactors.
It's about more than just a one-time thing. It's got to be a part of who you are.
Right. It's like weaving generosity into your life, not just like doing a good deed every now and then to make yourself feel good.
And he warns us about giving just to show off or to get something back. He calls it ostentation.
Yeah. It's kind of like what Jesus taught about doing good deeds in secret. It makes you wonder, though, how much of our giving is about wanting recognition?
Yeah.
Or getting praise? Like, how can we make sure that what we give, it comes from a place of pure compassion?
It's a constant check-in, right?
Yeah.
Making sure your heart's in the right place. And St. Vincent de Paul, he goes even further. He says charity should be universal. Like, it should go beyond your personal opinions, who you vote for, even friendships.
He really pushes us to consider those tough situations. Like, imagine you had to choose between saving a friend or an enemy. Who would you help?
It's tough, but it makes you confront your biases, the limits we put on our compassion.
It makes you think about how we can extend that charity to everyone.
Everyone, regardless of how we feel about them.
Even if we don't like them.
Especially if we don't like them.
He ends by urging everyone to join forces, to work together, to really make a difference. He leaves us with this really powerful call to action. Be united, love one another, according to the precepts of Christ.
It's a good reminder that we're all in this together.
For me, a big takeaway from all this is that disconnect between how we act religiously and how we practice real charity.
Like rituals and pronouncements, they're meaningless.
Meaningless.
Unless they come with compassion and action.
That seems to be the message from both Kardec and St. Vincent de Paul.
It's a message that speaks to a lot of different faiths, a lot of different spiritual traditions.
Makes you wonder,
yeah,
how often do we get caught up in all those rules and rituals and lose sight of the essence of what it really means to live a spiritual life?
That's a big one. How do we make sure our actions actually line up with our beliefs?
Yeah. Speaking of actions, I was really struck by St. Vincent de Paul's point about not judging who's worthy of help.
Right. Like, who are we to decide who deserves compassion?
He basically says, let God handle the judging. Just focus on helping.
It's a tough one, but he's got a point.
It's about trusting that there's something bigger at play. And our part is just to be compassionate, not to overthink everything.
Not being naive, but recognizing that everyone has value, no matter what.
And it brings us back to faith. Both Kardec and St. Vincent de Paul seem to say, true faith, it's not just about believing. It's about living those beliefs.
Putting your faith into action.
Exactly. It's got to be more than words. And this idea of a just world, a compassionate world, that's where things get really interesting. Because if we really believe that charity is the key to salvation, well, that has huge implications.
Not just for individuals, but for the whole world.
It makes you ask, are we building a world where everyone even has a chance to be charitable?
Yeah, like, do our laws, our economic policies, do they reflect that?
These are big, challenging questions.
They are. But if we really want a world based on compassion, we got to face them.
And this brings us back to what St. Vincent de Paul said about united charity.
Working together.
Amplifying our efforts.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that we don't have to do this alone.
And that even small acts of kindness can make a difference.
Right. Like, just offering support can change someone's life.
Exactly.
So it's not just about those random acts of kindness we do sometimes.
It's like a whole different way of looking at things, how you live your life. It's about realizing we're all connected, you know?
Yeah. And what was really cool, both Kardec and St. Vincent de Paul, they're saying it's not just about, like, being nice.
Mm-hmm.
It actually helps us grow spiritually, too.
Yeah. Like exercising your soul. The more you give, the more you understand, the more forgiving you are, well, you just become more aware.
So we're helping others and helping ourselves become better at the same time.
Right. Everybody wins.
But how do we, like, actually live this way? It's kind of hard to put into practice.
Well, think about it this way. Think about, like, the way things are set up, our society, you know? Do our laws, our policies, do they actually help people be charitable? Do they support those who need it?
Whoa. Those are some big questions.
They are, but they're important. If we're serious about compassion, we got to look at the whole picture. You can't just say be charitable if the system makes it impossible.
You're totally right. It's like we've been focusing on individuals, but what about the systems? Are they helping or hurting?
It's not about having all the answers right away. It's about, like, asking the right questions, being open to learning new things, and maybe changing how we see things.
And it takes us back to that question you asked about how we treat each other, and if our actions really reflect that.
It's a good one to keep in mind.
As you go forward, think about what St. Vincent de Paul said. Be united. Love one another according to the precepts of Christ. We can do this. We can help each other, make a real difference.
And don't forget, those little things matter. A smile, listening to someone, helping out, it can change someone's whole day.
So remember, you have the power to make things better. It starts with you. Keep asking those tough questions. Keep learning. Keep making the world a little brighter, one act of kindness at a time.
And that's a wrap for our deep dive.